and welcome to the Depthcast. I'm your host, Echo, ready to explore another fascinating corner of myth and legend. This week, we're hopping, quite literally, into the world of Chinese folklore to uncover the story behind the Jiangshi. You might know them as hopping vampires or hopping zombies. Those iconic figures in Qing Dynasty robes, arms outstretched, moving with a terrifyingly rigid bounce. But where did this bizarre and chilling image come from? How does a creature born from ancient burial practices and Taoist beliefs become a staple of Hong Kong action horror comedies? Join me as we trace the origins, define the terror, and explore the cultural impact of the unforgettable Jiangshi. Before we dive into the full story of the Jiangshi, let me prepare you for a chilling journey through Chinese folklore that will introduce you to one of the most distinctive undead creatures in global mythology. The Jiangshi, or Chinese hopping vampire, is far more than just another monster tale. It's a complex cultural phenomenon rooted in Qing Dynasty burial practices, Taoist spiritual beliefs, and societal anxieties that continue to evolve in modern media. From its origins in the practice of corpse, driving to its golden age in 1980s Hong Kong cinema and beyond, the Jiangshi represents a unique intersection of horror, cultural identity, and social commentary that has allowed it to endure for centuries. To understand the Jiangshi, we must first travel back to the Qing Dynasty, which ruled China from 1644 to 1912. This was a time of significant change. Urbanization was rising, and many people left their rural villages to find work in distant towns and cities, creating an unexpected cultural problem that would give birth to one of China's most enduring legends. In traditional Chinese belief, proper burial in one's ancestral homeland was crucial for the spirit's peaceful rest. Death far from home presented not just an emotional tragedy but a spiritual crisis. For many low-income families, the cost of transporting a loved one's body back to their hometown was prohibitively expensive. This dilemma gave rise to a curious practice known as traveling corpses, or corpse driving. Families would hire Taoist priests to transport the bodies of their deceased loved ones back to their ancestral villages. These journeys would take place exclusively at night, with the priests moving silently through lesser-known paths, carrying lanterns and ringing bells to warn passers-by to stay away. The bell served a practical purpose. It was considered extremely bad luck to see a corpse being transported. Most travelers would hide their faces or flee entirely upon hearing these ominous bells in the darkness. The method of transportation is where things get interesting, and where the signature hopping enters the picture. Some accounts suggest that the priests used long bamboo poles placed under the arms of the deceased. As the priests walked, the natural flexing of the bamboo made it appear as though the corpse itself was hopping along between them. Other accounts suggest more supernatural methods, with Taoist priests affixing special talismans to the corpses, temporarily reanimating them just enough to follow commands back to their hometowns. Imagine encountering such a sight: shadows moving through the mist, the distant ringing of bells, and the unmistakable silhouette of rigid bodies moving unnaturally through the darkness. It's no wonder rumors began to spread about corpses that broke free from their Taoist masters. Reanimated dead, roaming the countryside, hunting the living. In the late 18th century, a Qing Dynasty scholar named Ji Shaolan collected tales of the supernatural in an anthology called Yuewei Kaoten, Biji Random Notes, at the Cottage of Close Scrutiny. This fascinating work, compiled between 1789 and 1798, documented many early Jiangshi tales. Ji Shaolan wrote that there were two distinct types of Jiangshi: recently deceased people who suddenly returned to life, or corpses that had been buried for a very long time but mysteriously did not decompose. He noted various causes for this unnatural phenomenon: violent deaths, suicides, spirit possession, or even the absorption of sufficient qi, or life energy, by a corpse. These documented tales gave legitimacy to the Jiangshi legends, and cemented their association with improper burial and unresolved spiritual matters, fears deeply rooted in the Chinese cultural psyche of the time. So what exactly is a Jiangshi? The term Jiangshi literally translates to stiff corpse in Mandarin. And stiff they certainly are. These undead monsters move with a rigid, unnatural gait that sets them apart from other supernatural creatures. Imagine encountering a figure in the shadows. At first glance, it might appear to be a person. It wears the formal green robes of a Qing Dynasty official, complete with the traditional hat. But as your eyes adjust to the darkness, the horror becomes apparent. Its skin is an unnatural pale white, sometimes with a greenish tinge due to fungal growth. Its body is completely rigid, locked in the throes of rigor mortis. Long fingernails extend from its stiffened hands like claws, and white hair hangs limply down its back. Most disturbing are its movements. The Jiangshi cannot walk as we do. Instead, it hops arms outstretched before it for balance, moving with a terrible rhythmic precision that is both absurd and deeply unsettling. This distinctive hopping results from rigor mortis, the stiffening of a corpse's muscles after death. But don't be fooled by its awkward locomotion. The Jiangshi is a lethal predator. Though completely blind, it hunts by detecting the breath of the living. This is why those who encounter a Jiangshi are warned to hold their breath. Heavy breathing will only draw the creature's attention more quickly. Unlike Western vampires that primarily feed on blood, the traditional Jiangshi feeds on something far more fundamental: qi, the vital life essence that flows through all living beings in Chinese metaphysical thought. When a Jiangshi attacks, it doesn't necessarily leave visible wounds like a vampire's bite. Instead, it drains the victim's qi through proximity or touch, leaving them weak, lethargic, and eventually dead, but with no external signs of violence. As cultural exchange brought Western vampire legends to China, some modern interpretations of Jiangshi incorporated blood drinking as well, but the original concept, the theft of life energy, is far more insidious, a force that drains your very essence, leaving your body intact but hollow. To understand the Jiangshi fully, we must consider Taoist beliefs about the balance of yin and yang, opposing but complementary forces that govern the universe. In Taoist thought, death represents an imbalance, specifically an excess of yin energy, the feminine principle associated with darkness, cold, and passivity. A properly buried person with all appropriate rituals performed would have this imbalance addressed. Their hun soul, the spiritual aspect, would ascend to the afterlife, while their po soul, the physical aspect, would remain with the body and eventually dissipate. But when burial is improper or incomplete, when rituals are neglected, or when death occurs under traumatic circumstances, suicide, murder, drowning, this balance is disrupted. The po soul remains too strongly attached to the body, infusing it with negative yin energy that eventually reanimates the corpse as a jiangshi. Other triggers for reanimation include exposure to moonlight, the influence of necromantic magic, or even a cat jumping over a corpse before burial. Once transformed, the jiangshi becomes an embodiment of imbalance, a creature of pure yin, seeking the yang energy of the living to sustain itself. If tales of the jiangshi have left you checking dark corners and listening for the sound of hopping, take heart. Traditional Chinese folklore provides numerous methods to protect yourself from these hopping horrors. The first line of defense against jiangshi has always been the Taoist priest. These weren't just spiritual leaders, they were the monster hunters of ancient China, armed with an arsenal of tools and techniques specifically designed to combat supernatural threats. Perhaps the most iconic weapon against the jiangshi is the yellow paper talisman. These are rectangular slips of yellow paper, inscribed with red ink, in specific Taoist symbols and characters. When affixed to a jiangshi's forehead, these talismans completely immobilize the creature. You might recognize this from films. The classic image of a jiangshi frozen in place, a yellow paper stuck to its forehead, is deeply embedded in pop culture. But why does this work? In Taoist belief, the forehead is considered the gateway to the mind and spirit. The talisman seals this gateway, preventing the negative yin energy from controlling the body. The traditional method of creating these talismans involved writing the incantations with chicken blood, believed to have purifying properties. The formula had to be precise. Any mistake in the characters could render the talisman useless or even dangerous. Mirrors are another powerful defense. In Taoist belief, mirrors don't just reflect images, they reflect truth and light. Two things a creature of darkness and deception cannot withstand. An 8-sided mirror is particularly effective, as the number 8 represents completeness and perfection in Chinese numerology. When confronted with its reflection, a Jiangshi will either flee or become confused and disoriented, giving you precious time to escape. Peachwood holds special significance in Chinese mythology as a ward against evil. Swords or rods made from peachwood are believed to be especially effective against Jiangshi. In ancient times, peachwood charms would be hung above doorways to prevent Jiangshi from entering homes, similar to how garlic might be used against Western vampires. The crow of a rooster is said to dispel a Jiangshi, as these creatures are primarily nocturnal and cannot abide the coming of dawn. This is why in many rural Chinese villages, roosters were kept not just for eggs or meat, but as a form of supernatural security system. Some more unusual defenses include scattering rice or red beans in the Jiangshi's path. The creature, being obsessive-compulsive by nature, will be compelled to count each grain before continuing its pursuit, an early version of the counting compulsion later attributed to Western vampires. Jujube seeds, when nailed into specific acupuncture points on the Jiangshi's body, can disrupt the flow of negative energy and immobilize it. This reflects the Chinese medicinal practice of acupuncture, showing how deeply the Jiangshi legend is interwoven with traditional Chinese knowledge systems. All these defenses share a common theme. They aim to restore balance and harmony. The Jiangshi, as a creature of excess yin, is naturally repelled by symbols and objects associated with yang energy, light, order, and warmth. The Taoist priest's ultimate goal isn't necessarily to destroy the Jiangshi, but to perform the proper rituals that will allow the trapped soul to move on, restoring cosmic harmony. While the Jiangshi has been part of Chinese folklore for centuries, it was the explosion of Hong Kong cinema in the 1980s that truly cemented these hopping vampires in popular culture. The golden age of Jiangshi films began in 1985 with Mr. Vampire, directed by Liu Guanwei. This groundbreaking film established what would become the template for the genre, a unique blend of horror, comedy, and martial arts that was distinctly Hong Kong in flavor. Mr. Vampire follows a Taoist priest and his apprentices as they battle Jiangshi. The film was a massive hit, earning over 20 million Hong Kong dollars at the box office, and spawning numerous sequels. In the 5 years following Mr. Vampire, more than 100 similar films were shot in Hong Kong and Taiwan. Titles like Encounters of the Spooky Kind all featured the now iconic image of the hopping Jiangshi, pale-skinned, dressed in Qing Dynasty robes, with arms outstretched and a yellow talisman potentially stuck to its forehead. What made these films so appealing was their unique tone. Unlike Western horror, which often takes itself very seriously, Jiangshi films embraced comedy alongside scares. They featured elaborate martial arts sequences, slapstick humor, and romantic subplots, all while maintaining genuinely frightening moments. It was a formula that proved irresistible to Asian audiences. These films also introduced some new elements to the Jiangshi mythology. Western vampire traits like fangs and blood drinking were sometimes incorporated to make the monsters more threatening. The yellow talisman on the forehead became a standardized image, and the Taoist priest evolved into a hybrid of spiritual leader and martial arts master. By the 1990s, the Jiangshi film craze had begun to cool, but the cultural impact was permanent. The hopping vampire had secured its place in Asian pop culture. However, after Hong Kong's handover to China in 1997, the landscape of Jiangshi media began to change. Increased censorship and changing cultural attitudes led to a reinvention of the Jiangshi. Films like Rigor Mortis from 2013 took a more serious atmospheric approach to the mythology. These modern interpretations often use the Jiangshi as metaphors for societal issues, urban isolation, the housing crisis, cultural erasure, and historical trauma. Beyond cinema, the Jiangshi has hopped its way into numerous other media forms. In television and animation, Shows like Jackie Chan Adventures introduced Western audiences to these creatures. Video games have embraced the Jiangshi with particular enthusiasm. The 1987 Nintendo game, Phantom Fighter, was entirely centered around battling hopping vampires. The fighting game series Darkstalkers features a character who becomes a Jiangshi. More recently, popular games like Genshin Impact include Jiangshi-inspired enemies. In audio media, the Jiangshi has found a natural home in horror podcasts and audio dramas. Shows like Afterlife Support feature episodes dedicated to these hopping vampires, using the intimate nature of audio to create particularly chilling experiences. The sound design for these productions often emphasizes the distinctive rhythmic hopping and creates an immersive auditory landscape that places listeners directly in the path of these creatures. What's remarkable about the Jiangshi's journey through modern media is how adaptable it's proven to be. From slapstick comedy to profound social commentary, from video game enemies to metaphors for cultural preservation, the hopping vampire continues to evolve while maintaining its distinctive cultural roots. As we've explored the jumping, hopping, and sometimes terrifying world of the Jiangshi, one question remains: why has this particular monster endured for centuries, continuing to captivate imaginations across generations and cultures? Like all effective folklore, the Jiangshi is more than just a scary story. It's a reflection of very real cultural anxieties and societal fears. In the Qing Dynasty, the original Jiangshi myths embodied fears surrounding death away from home, improper burial, and disrupted family structures due to migration. Remember that in traditional Chinese belief, proper burial in ancestral soil was essential for a peaceful afterlife. The Jiangshi represented the consequences of failing this cultural obligation, the dead, unresolved and restless, literally returning to haunt the living. For post-colonial Hong Kong in the 1980s and 90s, the Jiangshi took on new meanings. The creature's traditional Qing Dynasty clothing and hopping motion, remnants of a past era, reflected anxieties about cultural identity and historical continuity during a time of rapid modernization and uncertainty about the future. The blend of horror and comedy in Jiangshi films offered a way to process these anxieties through laughter and catharsis. The Taoist priest, with his traditional knowledge and methods, became a reassuring figure, a symbol that ancient wisdom could still overcome modern challenges. In the modern era, the Jiangshi continues to evolve as a metaphor. According to folkloric understandings, Jiangshi came from the hills, soaring through the air to devour the infants of the people. This description reflects deep-seated fears about threats to community and family. In contemporary interpretations, the hopping vampire represents urban isolation and housing crises, quite literally. The dead who cannot find proper rest in overcrowded cities. What makes the Jiangshi so enduringly powerful is its adaptability. While maintaining distinctive cultural characteristics, the hopping motion, the outstretched arms, the Qing Dynasty clothing, it can be reinterpreted to address new fears and concerns as society changes. The Jiangshi also illustrates how folklore transcends cultural boundaries. While distinctly Chinese in origin, it shares characteristics with undead creatures from around the world. Like the Western vampire, it feeds on the living to sustain itself. Like the zombie, it's a reanimated corpse with limited cognitive function. These cross-cultural connections remind us that despite different cultural expressions, humans share common fears: death, the unknown, the disruption of natural order, and the consequences of failing to honor cultural obligations. Perhaps the most profound aspect of the Jiangshi myth is its reminder of the importance of proper resolution. At its core, the Jiangshi is a being trapped between worlds, unable to truly live, yet not properly laid to rest. It's a powerful metaphor for unresolved matters, unaddressed trauma, and interrupted processes. The resolution of a Jiangshi story typically involves not just defeating the monster, but properly laying it to rest through appropriate rituals. This reflects a deeply human need for closure and proper endings, a theme that resonates across all cultures and time periods. Thanks for exploring the chilling tale of the Jiangshi with me. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a fellow folklore fan, and follow us on social media for extras, trivia, and future episode updates. Have a creature you'd like us to cover? Drop us a message, we'd love to hear your suggestions. For bonus content and exclusive episodes, visit www.thedepthcast.com. Until next time, keep an eye on your talisman, a mirror by your bed, and listen closely. You never know what might be hopping through the dark. This is your host, signing off from Hopping Horrors, where the unknown is just the beginning.